Hey y'all, it's Dr. Dre with A Better Way MD TV, and I want to welcome you back to Lucky Week 13. And I feel like this is fate because I'm recording this video on my favorite holiday, which just happens to be Halloween. And I love Halloween because I love the mystical, the magical, the dressing up. As a kid, I used to love getting all the candy. As an adult, I love passing out all the candy to the kiddos and seeing their faces light up, or maybe it's a little bit scary. I just love everything about it. And I love that it's a low pressure holiday. You can do whatever you want. You can decide that this is your costume, a button, or you can go all out in full witch regalia. So it's up to you, but I hope that this week, week 13, is lucky for you and that you have a breakthrough. And what I am going to talk about today is, again, desire. Now, last week we talked about desire and how desire is a feeling or a chemical reaction that is created from a thought or an idea that your brain has, and it results in some sort of action. And I talked a little bit about the I want cycle. I want a piece of candy. I have desire. I respond to that desire by eating. And the result of that cycle is that if it's something good, your brain's going to release a little dopamine. And we have learned over time that I want cycle ends up with the release of dopamine. And we do it so much, it's automatic. And then it becomes more about just getting the dopamine than anything else. Now, there's a way to break that cycle. And the first thing is to down-regulate your dopamine receptors. So there are lots of foods that give us a little dopamine hit, but the foods that have been engineered to be high in flour and sugar really set off that dopamine release. And so the way you down-regulate those receptors is to not eat flour and sugar. So if you're not there yet, I'd recommend that you go back to week 6 and learn how to do that and really focus on giving up that flour and sugar, because it makes the second part of breaking the cycle a little bit easier. Can you do it and still eat flour and sugar? Sure, but it's a lot harder. So give it up first, practice the I want cycle, and then we'll learn how to deal with desire in a way that moves us forward in weight loss. Now, desire feels differently in all of us depending on what that I want thought is. Sometimes it's wispy, like, I want a little piece of candy. Sometimes it's pretty strong because you want the Reese cup. And sometimes it's downright urgent. It feels so important that you almost feel like you don't have any control over it. And it's because your brain has set this up to make you think that way. But really, you always have control over whatever you eat. So I'm going to teach you next week how to deal with that sense of urgency. But this week, what I want you to do is I want you to not only know what desire feels like in your body, but I want you to acknowledge the I want cycle. So you want some food that's off of your plan. It creates a desire. And then what I want you to do is to mark that desire. I don't care what action you take, whether you avoid, resist, eat, or just acknowledge it. But I want you to mark or record when you do have those thoughts of desire of eating food off your plan. Now, you can record it in a number of ways. You can make a list and write down. Sometimes the brain likes a little trick of like seeing kind of objects move from one dish to another. And you can do this with lots of objects. It just has to be kind of small enough to fit in your pocket. So maybe dollars or quarters or different colored pebbles. I've tried a bunch of different ways. This week, I'm actually going to use skulls. Yes, I have this lovely bowl of skulls. I also have some small ones that fit in my pocket. But basically what happens is your brain gives you this idea that you want something like, oh, I really want to eat this Reese cup. And it creates the feeling of desire, and you recognize it in your body. And then you're going to acknowledge it. And you acknowledge it by marking it with a skull or whatever you use. And I'm going to put it in this cute little skeleton bowl that I got. And so every time I have a desire for a food that's not on my plan, regardless of what I do with that desire, I'm going to mark it. And then over the week, you can see kind of how many times your brain has given you the idea that you should eat a food because it's going to create dopamine. And that will give you a little bit of an idea of how many times you're going to have to learn how to allow that feeling of desire. But this week, you just have to acknowledge it. So I hope you have a wonderful Halloween and a lucky week 13. And I am going to take off and get on my broom and finish my Halloween decorations. So happy Halloween, and I wish you the best.